than that of augural priesthood, naming him among the heirs of the third degree, who were but distantly allied to his family, for a sixth part of his estate only, with a legacy of no more than 800,000 sesterces. Upon his requesting some office in the state, Tiberius granted him the honorary appendages of the consulship, and when he pressed for a legitimate appointment, the emperor wrote word back that he sent him 40 gold pieces for his expenses during the festivals of Saturnalia and Sigllaria. Upon this, laying aside all hope of advancement, he resigned himself entirely to an indolent life, living in great privacy, one with his gardens or a villa which he had near the city, another while in Campania, where he passed his time in the lowliest society, by which means, beside his former character of a dull, heavy fellow, he acquired that of drunkard and gamester. Notwithstanding this sort of life, much respect was shown him both in public and in private. The equestrian order twice made a choice of him to intercede on their behalf, once to obtain from the consuls the favour of bearing on their shoulders the corpse of Augustus to Rome, and a second time to congratulate him upon the death of Sejanus. When he entered the theatre, they used to rise and pull off their cloaks. The Senate likewise decreed that he should be added to the number of Augustal college of priests, who were chosen by lot, and soon afterwards, when his house was burned down, that it should be rebuilt at the public charge, and that he should have the privilege of giving his vote among the men of the consular rank. This decree was, however, repealed, Tiberius insisting to have him excused on account of his imbecility, and promising to make good his loss at his own expense. But at his death he named him in his will among his third heirs for a third part of his estate, leaving him beside a legacy of 2 millions of sesterces, and expressly recommending him to the armies, the Senate, and the people of Rome amongst his other relations. At last Caius, his brother's son, upon his advancement to the empire, endeavouring to gain the affections of the public by all arts of popularity, Claudius also was admitted to the public offices, and held the consulship jointly with his nephew for 2 months. As he was entering the forum for the first time in the fascius, an eagle, which was flying that way, alighted upon his right shoulder. A second consulship was allotted to him to commence at the expiration of the 4th year. He sometimes presided at the public spectacles as the representative of Caius, being always on those occasions complimented with the acclamations of the people, wishing him all happiness, sometimes under the title of the emperor's uncle, and sometimes under that of Germanicus's brother. Still he was subject to many slights. If at any time he came in late to supper, he was obliged to walk around the room some time before he could get a place at the table. When he indulged himself with sleep after eating, which was common practice with him, the company used to throw olive stones and dates at him, and the buffoons who attended would wake him, as if only in jest, with a cane or a whip. Sometimes they would put slippers upon his hands as he lay snoring, that he might upon awaking rub his face with them. He was not only exposed to contempt, but sometimes likewise to considerable danger. First in his consulship, for having been too remiss in providing and erecting the statues of Cassius's brothers, Nero and Drusus, he was very near being deprived of his office, and afterwards he was continually harassed with informations against him by one or other, sometimes even of his own domestics. When the conspiracy of Lepidus and Gluticulus was discovered, being sent with some other deputies into Germany to congratulate the emperor upon the occasion, he was in danger of his life, Caius being greatly enraged, and loudly complaining that his uncle was sent to him as if he was a boy who wanted a governor. Some even say that he was thrown into a river in his travelling dress. From this period he voted in the Senate, always the last of the members of the consular rank, being called upon after the rest on purpose to disgrace him. A charge of the forgery of the will was also allowed to be prosecuted, though he only signed it as a witness, at last being obliged to pay 8 million of sesterces on entering upon a new office of the priesthood. he was reduced to such straits in his private affairs, that in order to discharge his bond to the treasury, he was under the necessity of exposing to sale his whole estate by the order of the prefects. Having spent the greater part of his life under these and like circumstances, he came at last to the empire in the 50th year of his age, by a very surprising turn of fortune. Being, as well as the rest, prevented from approaching Caius by the conspirators who dispersed the crowd, under the pretext of his desiring to be private, he retired to an apartment called the Hermium, and soon afterwards, terrified by the report of Caius being slain, he crept into the adjoining balcony, where he hid himself behind the hangings of the door. A common soldier who happened to pass by that way, spying his feet, and desirous to discover who he was, pulled him out, when immediately recognizing him, he threw himself in great fright at his feet, and saluted him by the title of emperor. He then conducted him to his fellow soldiers, who were all in a great rage, and irresolute what they should do. They put him into a litter, and as the slaves of the palace had all fled, took their turns in carrying him on their shoulders, and brought him into the camp, sad and trembling. The people who met him lamented his situation, as if the poor innocent was being carried to execution. Being received within the ramparts, he continued all night with the sentries on guard, recovering somewhat from his fright, but in no great hopes of the succession. For the consuls, with the senate and civil troops, had possessed themselves of the forum and capitol, with the determination to assert the public liberty, and he being sent for likewise by a tribune of the people to the Senate house, to give his advice upon the present juncture of affairs, returned the answer, "I am under constraint, and cannot possibly come." The day afterwards, the Senate being dilatory to their proceedings, and worn out by divisions amongst themselves, while the people who surrounded the Senate house shouted that they should have one master, naming Claudius, he suffered the soldiers assembled under the arms to swear allegiance to him, promising them 15,000 sesterces a man, he being the first of the Caesars who purchased the submission of the soldiers with money. Having thus established himself in power, his first object was to abolish all remembrance of the 2 preceding days, in which a revolution in the state had been canvassed. Accordingly, he passed an act of perpetual oblivion and pardon for everything said or done during that time, and this he faithfully observed, with the exception only of putting to death a few tribunes and centurions concerned in the conspiracy against Caius, both as an example and because he understood that they had also planned his own death. He now turned his thoughts towards paying respect to the memory of his relations. His most solemn and usual oath was by Augustus. He prevailed upon the Senate to decree divine honours to his grandmother Livia, with the chariot in the Circensian procession drawn by elephants, as had been appointed for Augustus, and public offerings to the shades of his parents. Besides which, he instituted Circensian games for his father, to be celebrated every year upon his birthday, and for his mother a chariot to be drawn through the circus, with the title of Augusta, which had been refused by his grandmother. To the memory of his brother, to which upon all occasions he showed a great regard, he gave a Greek comedy to be exhibited in the public diversions at Naples, and awarded the crown for it, according to the sentence of the judges in that solemnity. Nor did he omit to make honour and grateful mention to Mark Antony, declaring by proclamation that he the more earnestly insisted upon the observation of his father Drusius's birthday, because it was likewise that of his grandfather Antony. He completed the marble arch near Pompey's theatre, which had formerly been decreed by the Senate in honour of Tiberius, but which had been neglected, and though he cancelled all the acts of Caius, yet he forbade the day of his assassination, notwithstanding it was that of his own accession to the empire to be reckoned among the festivals. But with regard to his own aggrandizement, he was sparing and modest, declining the title of emperor, and refusing all excessive honours. He celebrated the marriage of his daughter, and the birthday of a grandson, with great privacy at home.